Hello, boys and girls. I hope you're having a great day. I'm going to get started with your assignments for April 20th in your ELA packet. The first thing that you are to do is to read context clue cards on pages 266 through 267 and read each definition of the words in the glossary. Now, remember, the glossary is the part in the back of your book that has all the definitions of the vocabulary words. Complete activity in the assignment packet. Then you are to complete the prefix activity. After that, read Meet the Author and Illustrator on page 270. Then look through the illustrations on pages 271 through 286 of the story, Dog of the Sea Waves. Then complete the questions on the worksheet. After that, like you do each day, you will read independently for 30 minutes. And of course, this can be a story from your Journeys textbook or another book that you have at home. And then last but not least, complete your reading log. If you have access to Admentum, then you need to complete 30 minutes of your reading learning path as well. Okay, so your vocabulary and context page looks like this. You're very familiar with this by now since we've already read a couple of the stories and you've read and studied the vocabulary that comes before each story. The first one here is voyage. The explorer's voyage or ocean trip to Hawaii took more than a year. So by reading that card, boys and girls, you should be able to figure out what voyage means. And of course, you've got a clue here. You have a comma, and then after the comma, you're actually given the definition of voyage. Sometimes the authors do that. Sometimes they actually give us the definitions. So we know that a voyage is an ocean trip. The next one is lava. Hawaii's islands form from lava or hot melted rock from volcanoes. And once again, here you have another clue after lava with your comma, and then it says or hot melted rock. So we know lava is hot melted rock. And of course, we are experts at that anyway, because we've already learned about that in science and learned how igneous rock forms from cooled lava. Next one on this page is rippled. This lava in Hawaii rippled into tiny black waves as it cooled. Boys and girls, you should be able to determine with the clues, tiny black waves after the word, that rippled has something to do with waves. And it can be waves in water. It could be mostly water, but it could be referring to something else as well. You may have some other type of liquid that might ripple when it moves. Okay, over here, number 4, arrival. When visitors first come to Hawaii, their arrival is welcome. When you first arrive somewhere, that's whenever you first get there. And of course, our clue here is when visitors first come to Hawaii, their arrival is welcome. So we know arrival has to do with when they first come or when you first come to a place. Guided, this man guided or led tourists through a park in Hawaii. We know that guided has to do with leading because it says comma, this man guided comma or led tourists. So when you guide someone, you lead them around or you show them the way. Number 6, twisted. These girls twisted wire around flowers to attach them to crowns. And I think most of us are pretty familiar with that word twisted. It has to do with moving something around and around. Think about things that frequently get twisted. Rope, string, or shoelaces sometimes get twisted. Aboard. Each racing canoe has 6 people aboard. They are seated in the boat. Boys and girls, you can tell by that sentence after the word aboard that when you're aboard something, it has something to do with being in it or on it. Here it says they are seated in the boat. So we know being aboard the boat means you're in the boat. Okay. Anchor. A heavy anchor holds this boat in place when the boat is stopped. And I believe most of us have probably heard that word somewhere before, maybe in a story, or we've probably seen ships in movies where they all have to use an anchor to keep their boat or ship in place. This would be an example of an anchor. And of course, it tells us here, a heavy anchor holds this boat in place. So we know that the purpose of the anchor is to keep the boat from moving. Spotted, whales can be spotted or seen in the ocean near Hawaii. So something can be spotted, then it can be seen. A bay, people can swim, snorkel, or sail in the gentle waters of this bay or inlet. And I don't know about you guys, but this is making me think about our land and water features that we learned about in science. This is a nice picture of a bay. And if you'll notice that word in as part of inlet, in can mean into something. So an inlet area is an area that kind of goes into the land. So these would be calm waters that you would see in a bay. A bay area has land partially around it. Okay. So what you're going to do next, boys and girls, is complete the activity in your assignment packet that goes with those words. Okay. And you have an example here to get you started. The directions tell you to read the context clue cards. We already did that. Then locate and read the definitions of each word in the glossary. Now, I did not do this, boys and girls, but you can definitely take the time to find these words again in the glossary. Read the definitions of these words, even though you should have been able to use context clues to figure out the meanings of most of these words yourself. But just for another exposure, you can read the definitions in the glossary. And also, they give you that word used again in another sentence. So that can help you on this activity as well. Create your own context clue cards like the ones on pages 266 and 267. Draw a different picture than the ones included and write your own sentence that provides context clues. Pay close attention to that. Context clues. Okay, so make sure that your sentences let the reader, which will be Miss Clyott, know that you understand what the word means by using it the right way in the sentence. And I'm sure that you all remember Miss Clyott always saying this, but no definitions. Don't use the word don't give the definition of the word. Don't tell me what guided means. Don't tell me what lava means. That's not using it with context clues. Context clues shows the reader that you know how to use the word, not that you, not just that you know the definition of the word. Okay, so the first one's been done for you. The pirate made a voyage across the ocean on a ship. Miss Clyott did a couple more for you as examples, just to get you started. The second one is lava. So I wrote, we ran from the hot lava that flowed from the volcano. Now, boys and girls, I did not just write, we ran from the hot lava, because that doesn't necessarily let my reader know that I know what lava means. So I wrote a little bit extra. I wrote a big kid sentence. Remember our 7-up sentences, at least 7 words in a sentence to be a Big kid third grader sentence. We ran from the hot lava that flowed from the volcano. So I let my reader know that I know what lava is and I know how to use that word in a sentence. And then over here for the next one, guided, I wrote, the nice lady guided us through all of the rooms at the museum. And if you all remember us going to the art museum, you remember the lady that guided us through there and talked to us about Van Gogh's famous artworks that were displayed in the museum. So she guided us around or led us through the rooms. So boys and girls, this sort of gives you a head start. And yes, you may use the ones that I came up with here as well, but draw a picture that goes with it, just like the context clue cards that are in your reading books. Okay, now moving on to number 2, you are to use the prefixes un, pre, re, and by to make new words by adding them to the following base words. Now, just to remind you, a base word is another name for the root word or the main part of the word. An example has been completed for you. So, for example, here, boys and girls, the first one, fair, has been changed to unfair. And of course, un is the prefix. And when it's added to the base word or root word fair, fair would be the main part of the word, then it totally changes its meaning. When something is fair, we consider it as being the same or equal for everyone. Sometimes you may say if your mom or dad does something for your brother or sister that they don't do for you, that might be unfair or not fair. But if they do the same thing for you or your sister, you may feel like, okay, that's fair. When they do something that's considered equal to that action, or what they give one person and they give the other, is fair. But the opposite, when we add un, it totally changes that meaning to not fair. And boys and girls, we have completed most of these prefixes or discussed these, and these have been our bi-weekly vocabulary words that we've had throughout the school year. So un means not. That should have been an easy one. And re means again. We've done that one as well. By means to. We've done by and try, if you recall. Try means 3. By means 2, such as a bicycle or binoculars. I know those were some of our words. But the only one that we have not actually completed this year, but if I recall, when I taught second grade, this was a second grade prefix, and that's the word pre. Pre means before. So Miss Clayette's helped you with this part, so you can fill this in your packet if you weren't sure about some of these. So re means again, un means not, pre means before, and by means to. Now let's go back up here to the top. I did a few of them for you to get you started. Now you've got to decide, boys and girls, which prefix makes the most sense with that base word or root word. It is possible that a couple of these may have more than one possible prefix. So keep that in mind. The first one that I did here in that first column is heat. For the root word or base word, heat. Root word, remember root, base word, same. They mean the same thing. They're synonyms. Was preheat. If you preheat the oven before you bake cookies or a pizza, that means you heat the oven before you put the cookies or your pizza in. So pre means before. That's something I think that you're probably familiar with or have heard your mom say before, or dad, whenever they're cooking in the kitchen, that sometimes you have to do that. Okay. And then in the second column, I added the prefix re to fill to make the new word refill. And I know we are all familiar with that word because a lot of times when we get something to drink at a restaurant, or even maybe if our mom gives us water or tea or Coke, something to drink at the table, sometimes we drink it all up and then we want a refill to go with the rest of our meal. In the next column, I chose focal because I thought this might be one that you're not as familiar with. If you add the prefix bi before the word focal, you end up with the word bifocal. Now, you may have parents or grandparents that have to wear bifocal lenses. And boys and girls, those types of lenses are actually lenses that you would wear in your glasses, like what Miss Clyett has. But each lens is divided into two parts. That means sometimes people need to one lens for seeing far away and a separate lens for seeing things that are close up. So some people have to have bifocal lenses to help them see. So I thought that might be one that you're not as familiar with. And then developed, when something is developed, is fully formed. So when I think about, for example, a frog, okay, a frog is developed, but when it's first born, it's just a tiny egg and it goes through a lot of changes. So it's undeveloped when it's an egg. It doesn't look like a frog. But then as it gets bigger and bigger, it does become developed. So the opposite of developed would be undeveloped or not developed. Of course, the prefix un means not, and that makes sense. So boys and girls, when you are thinking about which prefix to use some of the different prefixes with that word. Some of them don't make any sense. When I think about the word test, I've never heard of an untest. I've heard of a pre-test before. I've heard of a retest before because sometimes Miss Clyde has given us retest. A pre-test would be a test that I would give you before the real test just to see what you know, which I've given you pre-tests before in class. A by test, that doesn't really make sense. So for test, you could actually put pre-test or retest for that. So like I said, boys and girls, some of these may have more than one possible answer. So as long as you pick a prefix that makes sense with that word, then it's fine and it can have more than one answer. Okay, and then your next set of directions is to read Meet the Author and Illustrator on page 270. Then look through the illustrations on pages 271 through 286 and complete the task below. Boys and girls, here you're basically taking a picture walk through the story before you actually read the story. Now, we don't, depending on what type of story we're reading, we don't always take picture walks because some of the books that we read don't have pictures. But when they do, it is a great way to get your mind ready to read by just glancing at the pictures in the story. It gives you a purpose for reading. It helps you to know some of the things that the story has in it, maybe some of the characters, or gives you some hints of what the story is going to be about. But it is important to take a picture walk before you read. Get your mind ready. So if you were, actually, we'll read this part together. Meet the Author and Illustrator on page 270. So if you'll turn in your book. And I know you remember from our other stories that I told you to always read and look over here on the left side. It helps you with what type of genre that the story you're going to read is, but also gives you some other little hints and things to think about that help you to understand the story. It talks to you about author's purpose, questions, and then down here at the bottom, realistic fiction is the genre. Now remember, realistic fiction is something that has not happened in real life, but it could happen in real life. Meet the author and illustrator, James Rumford, a longtime resident of Hawaii. That means that he lived in Hawaii for a long time. James Rumford hopes his readers will learn aloha, aina, or to cherish these special islands as much as he does. Scattered throughout the pages of Dog of the Sea Waves are tiny drawings of plants and animals that are found in Hawaii. Many of them are at risk of dying out. Rumford included these to show that Hawaii's natural beauty needs our protection. And this reminds me of what we've learned about in science about how it's important to protect our natural resources. So I'm definitely making a connection with that information that I was just given. Okay, so going back to our sheet. It says, describe how James Rumford feels about Hawaii. Boys and girls, after just reading that, we can tell how he feels about Hawaii. Now I'm going to make sure that I write a complete sentence, and I'm going to flip. I would normally say flip my question. It's not really a question, but it's a prompt, and it tells me what to write. Describe how James Rumford feels about Hawaii. So a good way to start my answer would be to take part of this prompt and put it into my answer. So I could say, I know that James Rumford feels blank about Hawaii because blank. And of course, the answer was just in the text. Why did the author include the tiny drawings of plants and animals that are scattered throughout the story? And once again, boys and girls, after reading that small section, it gives us the answer. So I could write something like, he includes the tiny drawings of plants and animals to show, and then of course my answer. Okay, and then after you read, for your reading log, you will write the name of the book, the pages read, so whatever your start page is to your stop page. And remember, if you're reading a chapter book, you may start on page 100 and finish on page 123 or 125. It just depends on how long your book is, how many pages are, how many words are on each page. Okay. Complete chart using a word from your independent reading that contains one of the prefixes above. Guys, we do this all the time. As you all are reading, from time to time, you will just stop and get so excited and come up to Miss Clyde and say, oh, Miss Clyde, I found a reword or a pre-word or a unword. Gosh, we've had so many prefixes and suffixes this year. So just look for a word from your independent reading that hopefully has one of the prefixes that we studied today in your packet. And then based on what you know that prefix means, what were you able to figure out about the meaning of the word? And you would write that here. And then tune in tomorrow for your ELA April 21st assignment. I will continue and help you guys out with that. I hope y'all have a great day. Bye-bye.